One of the things I find out about pastry dough when I do this, don't put it on top of one another. It takes forever to get cold. Put it like, don't stack it on top of itself.
Here, this one.
Depends on whether you have room in the refrigerator. Okay. All right. Do you want to mix another batch tonight and get it over with? Are you ready to mix another batch tonight? Okay. Then we'll do one more batch.
Do you think that for the sweet, like
The other one's for Sunday.
you make the same, whether it's sweet or savory, you don't put like a little bit of sugar if you're doing a sweet crust?
Okay, so I don't use sweet crust with this dough because I don't like it. So you can use sugar. If you're gonna use sugar, like we talked about sugar, cut the salt in half, okay? So 1 teaspoon of salt with however much sugar you use, okay? If you want that sugary taste. All right, I have to cut my butter. I wasn't gonna make another recipe. Always unsalted butter when you bake, okay? Why, you say? Because you always add salt to baking to equalize the rest of the leavening that you use. So if you use baking powder or baking soda, you have to use salt. If you use salted butter, you're going to end up with too much salt in your product. Does that make sense? So if we have enough time tomorrow, at the end of the class, we'll mix the other doughs that we need for Sunday. If not, you'll be doing that on your own. But these 2 recipes will be plenty for us to work with tomorrow. Yeah, they're still frozen, actually. It's gonna be hard to do them like that. Like I said, if you wanted to mix this with your hands, you could grate your butter, but anytime you are be using your hands, you'd be using a pastry cutter. Okay. So 3 more cups of flour.
You should. Don't you? Or should we not? Yeah. Yeah. I'll do that.
2 teaspoons of salt. That's why I like mixing this stuff in advance. It's pretty easy to do it as you go along. So 2 teaspoons of salt. I use kosher salt because it's not as salty. All right, and then just throw your butter in. So your butter wasn't cold, is that what you're saying?
It was cold, but it wasn't frozen. I had taken it out like an hour before class.
Well, it would be really hard to use frozen butter in a mixer, so I get that, okay? That would be harder, so as long as the butter's cold, and that's probably why you didn't need as much water too. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and just turn it on to get that mixed a little bit. Okay, so that's not, I got big pieces in here. use your hands to find, see where you're going to be. Okay, you'll find out over the next couple of days. I use my hands for everything, so. All right, so 6 more tablespoons of water, because it's not necessarily going to be exactly like the last one, especially if you're using a food processor, because there's probably some moisture in the food processor somewhere, usually underneath. 5, 6. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and add these in one at a time. 7. So I'm stuck here somewhere. Let's try again. So you can see it wants to come together in the worst way. There's not enough moisture in there yet. I'm thinking that my blade's lifting. Not yet. Maybe a tablespoon more.
Here, should I mute you again?
You could take this dough right now. It'll keep in the fridge for about 4 or 5 days. You could take it as it is, roll it out a little flatter, and throw it in the freezer for 60 days if you wanted to.
Yeah, no, I
It
put
will
them in the
keep.
fridge before, like at Christmas, and I was like, oh, it got moldy after a week. But yeah.
Because it's got all that butter in it.
Yeah.
That's why.
So we can just make the dough tonight for the weekend, right? I mean, I think I'm just going to make all my dough for the weekend.
I don't blame you.
4 batches.
You already got your kitchen all up. Yeah.
Exactly. 4 full recipes. Okay.
Yeah, 4 full recipes. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. I'm going to cut this in half. Everybody's second dough come out all right? Mine did not so much. I have a couple of soft spots in mine, actually.
Yep. Here, let me put this one over here. It's bigger. There you go. Okay. Here's the bigger one. If you put it here, then we'll divide it in half.
Okay, so go ahead and I'm going to get downstairs and get some more flour. I can't. I don't have my butters in the freezer. I will mix my other 2 batches tomorrow because my butter's frozen solid. Like I said, tomorrow before we start, about a half hour, 20 minutes before we start class, after you do your onions, take your dough out, okay? All right, is everybody happy with the way their dough is coming out?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Yep. So Any difference in the pie crust you've ever made before? Do you notice any difference?
You know, my mom
No?
used to always use lard, so.
Yeah, I
Lard,
typically,
listen,
I typically have done 3-to-1 for the butter shortening ratio.
three to one, three short, three butter, or 3 cups to 1 shortening?
Yeah, I think so. Like a quarter shortening. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is going to be a much softer crust than you're used to working with. When you say lard, my grandmother she would take flour and she would rub lard into it and leave it in the refrigerator. It was there all the time. She baked pies every week, so she did it all the time. Lard makes really good pie crust, but Crisco does. It's a totally different beast. Lard has liquid in it because it's an actual real fat. Hard to come by these days too, lard. You have to look for it or ask the butcher where it's at. And there are people in England that use suet when they make pie crust, which I can't even imagine what that would be like. But this is, like I said, this is an easy crust to work with because it's very forgiving. Oops, I gotta find someplace to
Say
put.
about using white vinegar. Can you use white vinegar instead of water or replace some of it with vinegar, and what happens?
You could, the white vinegar, I can't tell you why that works. I have no idea. The acid, normally you use white vinegar to give you bubbles. Okay, so here, I'll give you a perfect example. When you make cannoli shells, okay, you put 2 tablespoons of white vinegar in them. And the reason you do that is, the bubbles in the cannoli shells,
Yeah.
that's what creates that. Okay, so if you put white vinegar in, you're not necessarily you're going to get bubbles, but give it a try. Listen, I am all about doing this is a basic recipe. So, you try what you want, but remember, if you're going to put liquid in, you got to take liquid out. So yeah, if you're going to use vinegar, so use the vinegar first and then add the water. How's that? Does that make sense?
For that. Yeah. No, because like I think Legume, which is a restaurant in Oakland, like they have a vinegar pie that's like delicious and super popular. And
But
I can't remember
the vinegar
comes in the crust or the filling.
They put vinegar instead of water. So you have the taste of vinegar. That's a
It
balance.
doesn't taste like vinegar. It doesn't taste like vinegar at all.
Well, vinegar should cook out and taste sweet. All vinegars. If you cook vinegar down, you get sweet. Okay. So tomorrow, you'll notice that tomorrow when you cook your onions, the vinegar will make it sweet. I've never, vinegar pie. Is there a reason why they call it vinegar pie?
I don't know, but it's like their bestseller, right? Like it's just
I have to check it out. I have worked in this pastry class that we teach at school, lots of people ask that question, can I add vinegar? And it's usually white vinegar. You want to use white vinegar because if you use anything else, it's going to change the color of your crust. So give it a try. Add 2 tablespoons of vinegar instead of, the water. And probably it would work better.
Batch of sweet, because I think it goes nicely.
I was just going to say, it probably would work better with the sugar because you're going to get a sweet and sour taste to it, But the vinegar, whenever you cook vinegar, the only time it stays sour is when it's cold. Vinegar will give a more floral aroma to something as you cook it off. Did you put that in? Grace, did you put vinegar in there?
Not in this batch because the vinegar, I have to get the vinegar. I put it downstairs. I'll do it later.
You're like me. It's downstairs. That's where my flour's at. That's why I'm not mixing any more between my butter and my flour. They're both downstairs. Okay, any other questions about your dough for tonight? Or what you want to do before tomorrow? So make sure you decide what kind of pans you're going to use tomorrow. Okay, so for your quiche and your tartlets, and you just need and you just need a sheet pan for your turnovers. I probably more often than not, because I make turnovers all the time, and it's easier to cut them for me, it's easier to cut them with a circle. Otherwise, I have to measure all the squares out. But however you want to do it, okay? And we will use a fork to seal them.